The following program is sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.
About money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
It's Friday, and we're going to be talking about money. The tagline, I've used that a number of times. I'll continue to use it. Here we go. So he was arrested, went to prison for a year, and then his conviction was overturned, and he was arrested again. He went back to prison, and this week, that was overturned. Who was it? How does it affect you, the investor? That's coming later in the program. You got to stick around and hear who it was and why it will affect investors. Have a great guest today. You want to hear about his story? He's got some insights into business and solving some of business problems. A lot of what I have to say, or some of what I have to say, I've taken from the book Freakonomics by Levitt and Dubner, and some from The Money Game by Adam Smith. You know, I don't remember who said it, but I've heard it attributed to Winston Churchill. I've heard it attributed to several people. The phrase that what people usually do is usually wrong. You know, conventional wisdom. What is conventional wisdom? You know, sometimes conventional wisdom is right. Sometimes it is wrong, dead wrong. You know, sometimes circumstances change. I want you to think back into the 1700s and think about the Sioux Indians in the plains. As the Sioux Indians stood on top of the hill and looked down and saw hundreds of thousands of buffalo, he thought, how could life change? Could not imagine that life would change. Could not imagine those buffalo never being there. You know, and what was the response with the shamans and with all the preparations they did and all the medicine men and all that? What effect did that have? Didn't change anything. The buffalo disappeared. You know, we live in an age of rapid change, of disruptive technology, of disruptive philosophies, of disruptive businesses. You know, just think about the phone for a second. I've used the example any number of times. You know, it wasn't that many years ago. The phone was that big black thing that sat in the home, it sat in the office. And then along came some companies like Palm that actually there were some companies that made a big, huge mobile phone. But Palm came with their Palm and the Palm Trio. And then, even that disruptive change was replaced by the BlackBerry. And that BlackBerry was replaced by the iPhone. Someday soon, the iPhone itself will probably be replaced. Who knows? You know, it's a time in which the world changes, times change. Life, in many ways, has been made easier, and in some ways less complicated, some ways more complicated. Last week, the guest was Fedra Dickman. She talked about building a travel agency to 70 people and then seeing it all come down because of change. There's things that we have as conventional wisdom and conventional outlook. You know, one thing that was mentioned is you need to drink 8 glasses of water a day, right? You've heard that. You know that. You know there's no scientific proof. There's no evidence anywhere that says drinking 8 glasses of water a day is good for you. Nothing. It's one of those things that's grown into the culture. People believe it. People think if they drink 6 glasses of water a day, they've had too little. You know, but there's no evidence anywhere that says you should drink 8 glasses of water. There's nothing that says you shouldn't. But there's nothing that says 8 glasses of water a day is good for you. There's scientific studies that are done for medications. One of those that was done was a thyroid medication, a replacement of thyroxine, a Synthroid. Synthroid was a drug that was developed for cancer patients, in large part, people that had had their thyroid removed. And Synthroid came along. It was manufactured and distributed by Boots Company. Boots Company is a UK company. It was the largest retail distributor of medications in the UK. And they paid $250,000 to do a study. They paid a Dr. Betty Dong of the University of California at San Francisco to do a study to show that Synthroid was actually superior to the generic drug that people were taking. Synthroid cost a lot more, and it was a very specific drug. The large study that was done did not prove there was any difference with any Synthroid, with Synthroid being superior at all to a generic medication. But the contract the Boots Company had with Dr. Dong, that contract forbid her to publish results unless they approved it. And for 5 years, Boots Company went along and tried to discredit the study that she did. They tried to do things to keep the results from being published, because Synthroid was a drug that was making them a lot of money. They questioned the study design. They studied the results. They actually went so far as to take her results, manipulate those results, and publish results which showed that Synthroid was superior. Dong submitted a paper to the AMA, the American Medical Association, the journal of the AMA, and that paper she had to withdraw under the pressure from the Boots Company because they had the right to do that. They'd paid for the study. They had the right to suppress it. For 7 years, this went on. Synthroid was an $800 million product for the Boots Company. Think about what that meant. That's billions of dollars that rolled into the Boots Company. And if that article would have been published, they would have lost that entire market. Eventually, the Boots Company was purchased by Knoll in 1995, and the Knoll Company continued to suppress the information. But some word got out, and the Wall Street Journal investigated it and published an article. And eventually, Dong's article was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and a class action suit was filed against Boots Company and their successor, Knoll Company. They paid $365 million to settle that suit. But for many years, there were any number of patients that suffered from thyroid cancer that thought they were receiving a superior drug when in fact they weren't. There was a time, that was in the 90s. There was a time when you go back and look at how this whole process has gone with scientific discovery. In the 19th century, a lot of the work was done by gentlemen scientists working in their labs in their homes. Picture Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, him working in his basement. Not that there was ever a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, but that was the kind of thing. The guy that developed penicillin, Arthur Fleming, he was working in his home. He left the windows open, the wind blew in, and he discovered penicillin. It was working from their home. But the 20th century brought about changes, and especially World War II. It was the military that spent a lot of money doing scientific studies, mathematical studies. We've talked about some of those on this program. And during that time, during the 50s and the 60s, there was this whole concept that grew up about the military-industrial complex. Remember that term? That was a significant change in how work was done in the scientific community. Big science became a major investment of the government and of business. The Manhattan Project grew out of big science. Scientists felt that their work was beneficial not just for the government, but for society in general. R&D expenditures by the government in 1970 were $14.9 billion. Industry, $10.4 billion. By 77, government expenditures had expanded to $63 billion, and industrial expenditures to $133, continuing to increase during that time and continuing to increase today. A significant amount of money pouring into research, with huge improvements in healthcare, electronics, travel, home appliances, recreation. Everywhere you look, there's been a benefit. But along with those benefits, there have been those studies like Synthroid, where there's been a cover-up, where there's been information suppressed. There's a potential for a conflict of interest like Synthroid. You know, what is it that you can say? You can fool some of the people all the time and all the people some of the time. That exists today. You look at what happened in the tobacco industry and how for many years they suppressed information about smoking being poor for your health. That happens. And there is something you need to be aware of. But we're coming to commercial break, so don't go away. We'll pick this up after the commercial break. Be back.
Stay tuned. About Money returns in a moment with your host, Mike Adams, here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Lots of people manage investment portfolios. Just a few can manage a successful portfolio and provide exceedingly great service to their clients. Here's Mike Adams from Adams Financial Concepts.
We believe the price you pay should be based on the performance of your portfolio and the quality of service you receive.
You know, Mike, it seems that a lot of companies subscribe to the one-size-fits-all mentality of investing. Does one size really fit all?
Not with us. Every portfolio that we manage is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. We place our clients' interests first in all portfolio decisions.
If you're looking for a home for your seven-figure plus investment portfolio, call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts, specializing in creating and maintaining wealth for over 20 years. 206-903-1019. That's 206-903-1019. Or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Now we return to About Money. There's more information waiting for you at adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here again is your host, Mike Adams.
So I've been talking about conventional wisdom, and so much is positive, so much is just bunk. But scientific studies can be in the same way. What people propose and what is going on. And we've got music playing in the background. Do you realize that? I just happened to mention that to the engineer. That's okay. Maybe I should sing. Is that? Anyway, sorry. We're back to this. Okay. When you look at how all this revolves around and what it is for the investor, it's important to understand that everything you read and everything you see is not exactly the way it is. We're facing, as we come to this period of time in our life, as we come to this time in the economy in this country with investments, we're facing some very, very significant problems. And we have scientific evidence on one side, and you have opposition on the other. You know, the book that was written, That Used to Be Us, by Friedman and Mandelbaum, talks about 4 great challenges, and I believe that that is valid, that we will face these challenges. There's the question of globalization and the adoption of the free market and the growth of energy consumption. Because as markets grow, as consumption grows, it requires more energy. But more energy pollutes the atmosphere. That's an enormous challenge. How are we going to meet that in the future? That's significant on how we meet that. You know, you have people that say that we don't have an issue with climate, warming. You know, if you want to get an idea of what it means for global warming, the greenhouse effect, think about your car. Think about these summer days when you've got the air conditioning on, the car is running, you're comfortable as you drive at 69 degrees or 70 or 71, whatever you put the temperature in your car to. You arrive at a store to go shopping, you get out of the car, you're parked under a tree, the tree has shade so that you're kind of in the shade. You go into the store, you spend an hour or two shopping, come out, open the car door. And what does it feel like inside the car? Inside the car, it's 90 degrees or 100 degrees. How did that happen? The reason is because you have the sun rays and the energy coming from the sun shining on the car, which is heating upside. And there's more energy pouring into the car than is pouring out. That's what's happening with global warming. That's what's happening with the greenhouse effect. We're putting out carbon emissions into the atmosphere, which are blocking some of the energy from escaping into the atmosphere. So we're absorbing more energy on the earth than is escaping. That's scientific. That's easy to understand. Think about your car. That's what's going on. And as the temperature heats up, that creates a situation where there's greater amounts of water in the atmosphere that's melting the ice caps, moving more water into the oceans. The oceans are rising. We've seen that. And it creates drought conditions as well. Look at California. Look at Washington. Look at Texas. Look at 60% of the U.S., and maybe it's a bigger portion this summer, is going through this drought conditions. It's not just a cyclical kind of thing. We're actually heating up the atmosphere. 10 or 11 of the highest recorded temperature years, average temperature, have been recent. Only 1 year in the last 12 has not set a new record in temperature. That's pretty indicative that something is going on. We face an issue with that. But as we face those issues, we also have investment opportunities. It's important for investors to keep track of what's going on and how to take advantage of the investments that are going to be available, because there will be. Growth is happening in international markets. And the projection is that by 2020, 93% of the world's middle class will be in developing nations. 93%. Already China has a bigger middle class than twice the size of a middle class of the U.S. population. 600 million people in the Chinese middle class. They're consumers. And when we talk about middle class, we're talking about people who are not living at subsistence level, but they're beginning to consume. They're buying our lattes. They're buying our cars. They're buying products that are made. They're not existing. They're actually consuming. That's the middle class. And most of the middle class will live in emerging countries. That presents some issues. But we also see, to go along with that, are some of the political issues. Think about what's happening in Greece, with what's happening in Russia or Brazil or some of the other countries around the world. There's a political risk. Not only is consumption going up and markets are being developed in those countries, but there's a political risk. There's a risk in terms of how investments are done. Those are some of the challenges. For the investor, it means being aware of what's going on with investments and being aware of what's going on in the world. It's a matter of evaluating and understanding and picking the right place at the right time to put your money. That's the insight for this part of the show. I want to shift gears now. Part of my program is to bring you the investor. The entire program actually is a focus to bring you, the investor, insight into what's going on in different industries with different companies so that you can be ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. My guest today is Yuri Zaremba. Did I say that right?
Well, Zaremba, close enough.
Zaremba. Welcome to the program, Yuri.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
So tell us about your background. Let's begin with your background.
Sure. I'm a Ukrainian immigrant. Moved here when I was a little kid, but pretty much raised in the Northwest, starting from Portland, and then eventually setting up home base here in the greater Seattle area. I'm a digital design consultant, which means that I help small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and even startups make products as well as websites, anything really that is on a screen.
I should have said the name of the company. I was
Zaremba.
Zaremba.
Yeah, Zaremba.
So tell us about when I think back at what's happened, the internet came into being. By the mid-'90s, it was beginning to take off and explode. We went through the whole dot-com era, where a lot of people said, brick and mortar was going to disappear and it was all going to be on the internet. That didn't happen. We still had the brick and mortar, but the internet has had a huge impact on how we do business and where we do business, and that's where you are.
Yeah, and it's only going to become, and I say this without meaning it in a negative light, but it's only going to become more pervasive because, traditionally when you say the internet, you mean that you either get on your laptop or on your mobile device, but now, the internet is going to be completely surrounding you at all times, in your home, in your workplace, on the streets. So I think it's only becoming a more relevant conversation.
So let's talk about what you do in terms of Zaremba.
Yeah, sure. So I help clients. I help customers build new businesses that are online. So anything that has anything to do with the internet. It could be a website. It could be a mobile application. It could be a connected device. I help them build products as well as redesign existing products. So if you've got a website or web application that you haven't updated in 7 years, I'm the guy that you call to help pivot and make sure that you're hitting all the right goals.
And a lot of us did build websites back around 2000, or in our case we started in 2005, and one of the first things we did is we built a website.
Right.
Paid way too much for it. It didn't do what it was supposed to do. We've gone through a couple iterations since then.
Right.
But that whole process, what was adequate in 2005 is not really functional in 2015.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because in 2005, you were probably treating it more as an advertisement or something static that you just put online. And these days, it really has to be something that lives and breathes and helps your, in this case, listeners, as well as your customers engage.
So how do you get them to engage?
By adding value to their everyday life. So in any way, if you're able to have them come out wiser or happier after engaging with your product or business or content, that is what I call a good engagement.
So when you say happier or more engaged,
Sure.
What do you mean?
Make them feel good. Make them feel delighted to have been introduced to you, to your content. So, write a very insightful article on investing that is, condenses very valuable information into something, someone on the light rail can read within 2 minutes, or, put your radio program online on your website, or there's a slew of ways that you can add value to a customer, but it's really just a mindset shift. How can you delight your customer? And every business has proprietary knowledge that they can leverage in order to do that.
So, when I think back to what we did in the beginning, you put up a website. It was basically like a reference.
Yep.
It would be like you're in Who's Who, or you've got, an article. It was for somebody to go check and see that you were really who you were. Mm-hmm. And the websites became so similar. Mm-hmm. You could have taken one person's website and added it to another in the financial industry. Even today, that's still kind of true. But you're talking about moving beyond that to something more.
Yeah, moving beyond that to really communicating the tone and value of your brand.
We're going to be right back to get the rest of the story. Don't go away.
Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
We're back with more About Money. For details on what you hear on today's show, visit adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Now, here again is Mike Adams.
So I'm here with Yuri Zaremba. Good. And we're talking about developing beyond the traditional website.
Right.
So I want to use Adams Financial Concepts as an example. We're about to develop a new website, a new web portal. And when I say website, it goes beyond website. Mm-hmm. We do a 401k. Traditionally, we've done individual management or investment management for individuals. We've been doing 401ks now. We're launched. We have a number of them. And we're about to build a website and portal. And website is probably the wrong word for it. But if you look at where we are in retirement plans and 401ks, it's something where most people will spend more time planning their vacation than they will about their retirement. It isn't until people get to be about 50 or 55 years old that they suddenly realize I'm approaching retirement. And oh my gosh, I don't have enough money to retire. I'm going to have to work longer. I'm going to have to take a bigger cut in what I get. You know, what you'd like to have is the people that are in their 20s and 30s, because if they start setting aside money soon enough, they'll find that when they get into their 50s, they can spend more time planning their vacations than worrying about retirement because their retirement's taken care of. But that's not the case today. And most providers of advice will offer one-on-one meetings, but the only people that show up at the one-on-one meetings are the people that are 50 years old or older. So we feel that we have a coaching and monitoring system. We want to put that together in I don't know, I keep saying website. That's probably the wrong term. You
want to roll it up into some type of product.
We want to roll it into some type of product. So give us some insight as to how you do that.
Sure. So off the cuff, you really just want to focus on making your product as accessible as possible. What I mean by that is that very easy to discover, whatever it is that you're trying to build, and for it to play well with any device or format that someone might be looking at it through. So if it's a website, then that means that it doesn't matter if they're at work on their desktop or if they're looking at their iPad or their Android phone. It needs to work well on anything and everything. To get more tactical, though, simplicity is key here. You had mentioned that it's easier to plan a vacation than it is to put together a 401k plan. That's exactly why your 20-something-year-old isn't interested in getting started on their 401k plan. They've got, when they are interested, they're maybe only going to give it 5 minutes and they're going to want to walk away. So the key is going to be to identify your demographic. So if you're targeting 20-somethings, then, anticipate that you only have maybe 2 minutes to try and explain this extremely complicated concept, and then format your product to address that. So if it is a website, being extremely clear on why they should immediately get to work on their 401k plan, and making sure that your product it's easy to get through within 3 to 10 minutes and communicating that. Say that, hey, in comparison, and that can create a value proposition to your customer, because now you can say that in comparison to our competitors, with whom you got to go through a 1 hour, 2 hour session and go through all this really complicated legalese, you could say that, hey, we developed this product that within 2 to 10 minutes, you can get started, and you can, whether or not you work with us, you'll walk away with it from this engagement with some really valuable information, and that'll delight your customers, and it'll, whether or not they work with you, it's going to help you build a really strong brand.
And as you build a brand, what are you looking for in terms of that?
I would say sustainability, but also curiosity. So your tone of voice, not just your logo, but also your tone of voice in all of your copy, in your photography, if there is any kind of illustration, making sure that everything is consistent, but it also instills a sense of curiosity. There's gonna if you think about brands you like, every listener on this show is going to have a different logo pop up in their mind, but ultimately, all those logos popping up in listeners' minds, they've made they've made people curious enough to where they've embedded themselves into their mind. So communication is key, but also making sure that you're injecting enough personality into your branding and into the way that you communicate that the overall experience is memorable.
And that's the kind of product that you want to build.
Exactly.
In a digital format.
Yep. So now just translate all that into a product, and that's what we call an engaging product.
And so what should be the result of an engaging product?
Loyal customers. So in comparison to traditional advertising, where the focus really is to just get as many eyeballs onto a specific image or even static website, what you're trying to do is actually have customers come away feeling wiser, smarter, happier, whatever you want to call it, but more delighted for having come across your company. So really the barometer and the metric should be how many people are being delighted by our company, after having come across this product, in comparison to how many people have seen our logo.
There's something that's been going on with a lot of the applications, the apps that are being built. There's a free choice.
Right.
And then once you do the free, there's an upgrade.
Yep, because you're hooked. You're hooked. It's a great business model, because what you do is you create a very low barrier of entry, right? It's free. You immediately communicate some type of value to a customer, and it doesn't matter if it's an investment product or if it's a video game. You communicate that you're gonna like this. You give them some low-hanging fruit knowledge, and again, you delight them. And now they're hooked to your brand. They've got a great experience with you, and they want to prolong that. So you give them the opportunity to pay for the service. It's a great business model.
I've heard about some of the games that are done, and you get 3 hours of play for free, and then once the free time is done, you have to pay if you want to play longer during the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's one way. And another brilliant thing that some of these game developers do is that they don't make you pay after 3 hours, but they'll make it so difficult after a while that you have to pay to make yourself be able to carry on in the game. So they've gotten very creative with how they generate revenue.
And that can be done with not just games, but with almost any product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing as if you are publishing white papers for free, or if you're publishing a blog for free, then upselling premium content that just expands on those topics. So if you give a quick talk on what the benefit a compare and contrast of a 401k versus a Roth, then actually upselling and saying that for X amount of money, we'll tell you which plans to go with and give you specific statistics on which ones are more proven than others. Because just having that basic conversation already communicated and gave a certain level of value to your customer. So now all you're saying is that, hey, we've already you can now trust us. We've communicated to you that we know what we're talking about. Buy this if you want to learn the details. And it works.
And it works.
It works.
It's a tremendous change from the static website that was a reference and just, this is my name, this is my phone number, this is my address, buy from me, please.
Yeah.
It actually becomes more interactive.
Yeah.
And it's the interaction that between the digital portion and the potential customer that really creates the ongoing relationship.
Yeah, and a progressive phenomenon that's kind of happening right now is that it's not necessarily just limited to the website, because what you're doing is the message that may have started on your website, you're now also trying to take into apps by building specific products, and you're taking and turning into a podcast to communicate some low-hanging fruit knowledge, and you're taking that and you're turning it into a smartwatch app that condenses your app. And across the board, it doesn't really matter what method you take for it. You're really just trying to create value for your customer and create customer delight.
That's great. So if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to have you talk about how they could do this with their products, how would they do that?
Visit Z as in zebra, rmba.com, or hit me up on Twitter at ZYURIY as my handle.
That's great. Thanks for being on the program. It's remarkable how far we've come in such a short time, and yet, can you expect anything less?
Yeah, let's keep pushing forward. Thank you for having me, Mike.
Thanks. We're going to be coming up to the rest of the program and talking about this guy who was arrested, who was convicted, went to prison. That was overturned. He was tried in state court. He was convicted. He went to prison, and that was just overturned. How does that affect you? That's coming right after the break, and we are coming to a break very, very shortly. Don't go away. And if you miss some of these programs, you can find them on a podcast on our website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. We do have a blog, and I'd be happy to hear your comments on the blog. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this break.
About Money will resume in a moment with Mike Adams on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Lots of people manage investment portfolios. Just a few can manage a successful portfolio and provide exceedingly great service to their clients. Here's Mike Adams from Adams Financial Concepts.
We believe the price you pay should be based on the performance of your portfolio and the quality of service you receive.
You know, Mike, it seems that a lot of companies subscribe to the one-size-fits-all mentality of investing. Does one size really fit all?
Not with us. Every portfolio that we manage is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. We place our client's interests first in all portfolio decisions.
If you're looking for a home for your seven-figure plus investment portfolio, call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts, specializing in creating and maintaining wealth for over 20 years. 206-903-1019. That's 206-903-1019. Or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So, the guy's name is Sergey Alekdorf. He was a programmer. He uploaded a file. Actually, he was working for Goldman Sachs. He uploaded a file, took it off-site, overseas, moved it to a server outside of the United States, downloaded the file to a thumb drive, and the file contained code. He'd been hired by Goldman Sachs, and he had just accepted a new job as a programmer for Tesla Technologies, a job that was going to pay him as a programmer $1.2 million. as a programmer. He had written some of the program code, and he took the code as some of the things that he had developed, but he also had some improvements on the code. Goldman Sachs went to the federal prosecutors, got him arrested. He went to court. He was convicted. He served a year in prison. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but after a year in prison, the appeals court overturned it and said it was not proprietary information, not proprietary code. Goldman Sachs then went to the state of New York and got the state of New York and the FBI involved and had him arrested again, had him prosecuted in court, had him convicted again, and he went to prison again. And that, this week, was overturned. The Manhattan DA who prosecuted the case, Cyrus Vance, said, "The code is so highly confidential, it's the firm's secret sauce." The firm's secret sauce. You know, Goldman Sachs valued this code at a value of $500 million. This thing that you could download onto a stick, onto a thumb drive, a USB stick. So what was it? What was this secret sauce? You know, it was an algorithm. It wasn't unique to Goldman Sachs. It wasn't unique to a lot of firms. To understand what it was because of the secret sauce, you have to understand that over 60% of all stock trades now are done by computer with no human interaction. When I want to trade stocks for my clients, I go in, I set it up, and I set up a trade. I execute the trade. But today, over 60% of the stocks are purchased by a computer trade. There's no interference. It's all an algorithm that does that. You have computers that are actually reading the news. You know, just a little over a year ago, maybe it's been almost 2 years ago. It has been over 2 years ago. Infineon Capital Management had set up a computer program that read the news, and in less than a second, you know, faster than a human can read the newspaper, in microseconds, the computer read a newspaper, read the article, interpreted it, and immediately bet 7 million shares that the market was going to decline and sold short those 7 million shares in a micron of a second, a thousandth of a second. It read the news article and sold 7 million shares short. That is what's going on with these algorithms. It's not like buying things long-term. It's by being very short-term and short-term oriented. But reading the news is only one part of it. A bigger part is the arbitrage which goes on. You have stocks traded and futures traded in Chicago, and you have stocks traded in New York on the stock exchange. Futures and cash. And there's a difference between the two. A future is a guess of where the stock is going to be in 3 months or 3 weeks or 6 months or a year. And you have the actual physical stock that you can buy. You can buy this future, you can buy the stock. You can sell short the stock, you can sell short the future. And when there's a slight difference, you can buy one and sell the other. And the computers are so fast, in microns of a second, a millionth of a second, they can take advantage of the discrepancy between those two. But over and above that, there's even more that's going on. And that was the book I mentioned actually before the book came out, Flash Boys, that there's a company that was called Spread. They raised between $200 and $300 million to do this because they put in a fiber optics network. A fiber optics network between Chicago and New York to take advantage of those arbitrage spreads. Now, normally fiber optics networks follow right-of-ways, they follow rail tracks. So you have not a straight line, but a zigzag kind of line where the fiber network is laid down. Spread came along and said, if we can put in a direct line, a straight line from Chicago to New York, we can save 4 milliseconds. A millisecond is 1,000th of a second? They can, right? Or a millionth. I don't remember. I think millimeters. It's 1,000th of a second. Okay, I'll get this right. Micron. They can save 4 1,000ths of a second because the data travels at the speed of light. And by having a direct line instead of one that followed the rail tracks and the right-of-ways, they picked up 4 seconds. And by picking up 4 seconds, they can be that much faster than someone else buying and selling. They spent between $200 and $300 million. They were renting that line for $20 million a year. And they had no lack of investors or renters that wanted to rent that line. Actually, they were selling even up to $30 million per year. But what they have, that's a zero-sum game. Think about all this that's going on between the flash boys, between the flash trading. All of that is a zero-sum game. The idea is to take advantage of small amounts of arbitrage, of taking advantage of small price movements, of being ahead. Recently there's been the hedge funds and the traders, the algorithm traders that are taking advantage of the index funds. Index funds, when an index change, the changes in the index, if you're adding stocks or taking stocks out, those are announced ahead of time. So if you buy the stock before it becomes part of the index, you know that someone else is going to be buying to make that index correct. And you know that they're going to sell stocks out of the index, whether it be the Dow, whether it be the S&P 500, whether it be the biotech, whether it be the natural resource, those indexes. If you can buy ahead of the time that they are part of the index, you get the arbitrage. But if you're a long-term investor, you should be looking not at that, but at the value of the companies that you're buying. That's how you take advantage of the short-term trading. You forget about the short-term traders and you invest to make money over the long term. And that's what you can do. The $500 million, that's an incredible sum that they're making to write algorithms. You can't play that game. So you might as well make money the old-fashioned way. Why not? It works. I will be back next Friday with more. If you miss any of this, you can find it on my website. And until then, have a very great weekend and a great week. I will be back next Friday.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you want Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared on the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Friday afternoon at 3 for more About Money with Mike Adams, here on Money Radio 1300 KKOL.
The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The following program is sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.